Episode 66. Michael Goldstein, a.k.a. Bitstein. Everyone's a scammer.
Interested in Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is a very vague concept to a lot of people.
Need to know more about cryptocurrency?
We're going to talk about the basics. This is something that people just have no idea about what crypto is.
How about buying, selling, and mining?
Tony, I think that's one of the things that's going to make us a little different from some other shows.
We're getting our hands dirty.
Then listen to Gary Leland and Tony Sakala, better known as the Crypto Cousins, on the Crypto Cousins podcast. This week's price.
This week's price in Bitcoin, $6,574. That's up $19, or 0.2% over the last 7 days. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Gary Leland here.
And this is Tony Sakala.
Well, Tony, you realize this is the fourth week in a row that Bitcoin's been up, even though it's only up 0.2%. I can't get that out right.
We'll take it.
Yeah, so every other time it's gone up 3 weeks in a row, it's gone down. So maybe that's a indicator there. But we still have a long time before the day's over.
That's true. Well, there's lots of indicators, that's for sure. And, reading tea leaves, reading the news, finding out what China's doing, looking at all the Bitcoin wallets. I mean, I think that really nobody knows what's next.
I think you're correct about it. I saw the other day that, not that we have any news because we were trying to get to the meat of the show today, but I saw the other day in an article I was reading that they're saying that Satoshi Nakamoto's wallet is no longer accessible. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that. It's not accessible.
Yeah, I heard that or read that in a news article the other day that maybe it's Chainalysis, or I'm not sure it was Chainalysis, but somebody said his wallet was not accessible. And, the word is there's already 4 to 6 million Bitcoin lost. So if his is not accessible, then there's 7 million lost. So really, we're at the cap. There'll never be more than... We're over the cap. There's not even as much Bitcoin now. In the year 2100, there won't be as much Bitcoin as there is now. I mean, if 7 million are lost, it means that we have 10 million right now instead of 17 million. And when you add the other 4, that's still just bringing us up to 14 million. So
the interesting news is that people are still sending Satoshi Nakamoto Bitcoin to his Bitcoin wallet.
Oh, really?
Yes, I read that somewhere too.
Well, then more is getting lost. Why would people be sending him Bitcoin if he has 1 million Bitcoin already?
They like him.
Yeah, even if they don't know the wallet isn't accessible. Let's say it is accessible. Even if I don't know if it is or not. You know what I mean?
Right. No, we don't know. Yeah.
Either way, why would you be sending him Bitcoin of all the people in the world send Bitcoin to? I mean, possibly one of the richest people on the planet if he does access his Bitcoin.
Right. It's worth billions.
Yeah, that's kind of like giving the guy what's the guy's name that runs Amazon?
Oh, Bezos.
Yeah, it's like sending Bezos money. We'll send Bezos a check for $100.
No kidding.
Warren Buffett, I think I'll send him a check for $50. Probably throw it away. They won't take the time to cash it.
Well, people have been saying for many years that Satoshi's private key might be lost. So the ability to spend that money is gone.
That's what I meant.
Private. Exactly.
To access it.
To access it. And so
but if you can't access it, it's lost.
Exactly. It's gone. It's but if someone finds it, then it's not lost anymore. So.
Well, I think people are probably saying that because people are certainly going, by now you would have spent some of that money. Because let's face it, I don't think he was one of the richest people on the planet when he created Bitcoin, or they created Bitcoin.
Or she.
Or she, yeah. But now whoever is, so you think they'd be going, I think I'm going to upgrade my lifestyle a little bit, even if it's not exorbitant. I'm going to upgrade my lifestyle a little bit.
Right, or at least cash in your Bitcoin cash.
Oh, yeah. Or you have to claim your Bitcoin cash.
You have to claim it.
Yeah, go claim your Bitcoin gold.
Yeah.
Maybe not your Bitcoin private because you got to expose your keys. I don't think you want to expose that many keys. Yeah, but you could claim your other stuff and just give it to charity. Even if you didn't want to do it, you could just claim all your Bitcoin cash and send it to some good deed place.
Like the EFF.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Well, we're not going to talk about the news, but did you hear Google Plus was hacked?
Mm-hmm. It's been hacked for a while, evidently. They just announced it.
They did. They just announced it. I know they didn't want the bad press back in March when Facebook was getting all that heat.
But they've shut it down, too. Or they are shutting it down.
They're shutting it down, yeah, exactly.
Which makes sense. It sucked anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
I quit using that. I mean, when it first came out, I messed with it and was working my account, but I quit working that long time ago. I don't even know that we've ever made even a post for the Crypto Cousins on the Google Plus page because it just sucks. It's not worth the time doing. Yeah. Hey, also, before we go, I want to remind everybody about the Texas Bitcoin Conference. End of this month, October 27th and 28th, since I'm the promo guy. I thought I'd get that out there, and you can find out more about that at texasbitcoinconference.com. Now, we have a discount code, Crypto Cousins, that gives you 15% off, Tony. But they have another code on their site that if you're taking someone, and I don't know what the code is, but like I said, if you go to texasbitcoinconference.com, you'll see the code. It's on the front page real big. If you use that code, you get a friend at half price. So that's like 25% off the two, right?
A friend at half price, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if you got a friend
free would be half off, yeah.
So he's half off, so that's 25% off the price of two tickets. Or each person's getting 25% off since one's full price and one's half price.
Exactly.
So invite a friend, say you want to split that savings, and you save 25% instead of 15%.
Or if you have no friends, use the Crypto Cousins code.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I talked to them the other day, and they said that they were doing really well on ticket sales, and it was going to be at least as big as last year, if not bigger. It's just according to how this month goes, which I was kind of surprised. I really didn't think it was going to be that big from just looks at how the site was coming along and stuff.
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself as a promoter, what would you say? What are people going to... I'm not saying they're not telling you the truth. I'm just saying that in this field, we like to be optimistic. So, and then giving the 50% off to the friend, to me, is more data than anything else that, they really need to fill the seats.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because we've seen that before on a conference that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see what happens. And also, today's show is from one of our speakers at BitBlock Boom. So if you're interested in speaking at BitBlock Boom, what do they do, Tony?
They go to the speaker form at bitblockboom.com/speaker-form. Or just go to the homepage and you'll see the link at the top.
Okay, there you go. So I guess we're not going to do a lot of – I'm trying to save a lot of my promoting – for the end of the show, for you guys that hate my promoting and don't know how to hit forward fast, So I guess we'll just go ahead and get into
get right into Bitstein's talk.
And the title of his talk is "Everyone's a Scammer: A Bitcoin Maximalist Guide to the World." Tell us about Bitstein, I guess. Can you give us a little bit of info about him?
Yeah, Michael Goldstein is a founder and co-founder and president of the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, and also the co-host of the Noted Bitcoin podcast. He also curates resources related to all meat carnivorous diets at justmeat.co.
He's a meat eater for sure.
And along with his colleague, Pierre Richard.
And Saifedean is there.
We have lots of meat eaters in the Bitcoin maximalist crew.
Yeah, I was listening to Saif the other day talking about his meat eating. But this talk was given at BitBlock Boom in July. So we've been sharing what we've been doing one a month, sharing one of the audio talks just with people out there. So if you haven't checked out the site, like I said earlier, you can go to the speaker forum. But if you haven't seen the site yet, go take a look. We should be selling tickets soon, and you'll be able to buy one. And they'll go out quick because we're only selling 150. So it's going to be a thing that first come, first serve type thing.
Yeah, we can keep it small and intimate and, not worry about, just trying to tell people what Bitcoin is. It's for people who already know what Bitcoin is and they really want to dive deeper.
It's a Bitcoin Maximalist conference, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
A Bitcoin Maximalist conference.
Yeah, and I saw that. I'm sure you know this, but those who don't know, I saw that term was by Vitalik. Buterin created that term to insult Bitcoin maximalists, and they kind of said, "Oh, we like that. That's not an insult. We'll take that." So they jumped on it and took the term and claimed it instead of. So it didn't turn out to be an insult.
Yeah, that's the best thing to do. Turn your enemy's insults into a badge of honor.
Yeah, into a badge of honor. Well, let's go to the interview, and we'll come back after it's over. Or not the interview, the talk, and we'll be back after it's over.
So anyway, this talk is about Bitcoin maximalism and my particular take on what that means and how I think people can better understand this position. It's building on an article of mine I wrote back in 2014 that I still think describes everything that is held up today, called Everyone's a Scammer. It's available on my website, nakamotoinstitute.org. So this talk is dedicated to Jerkos, who was the first person to demand Bitcoins for a real good. He scammed Laszlo out of 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas, so my hat's off to him. So I tend to think that everyone is some kind of maximalist because we're all in this technology because we have some big vision about how the world could be. However, these are competing, many of them opposed in some ways, while overlapping in others. We have many payments maximalists who will tell you that the important thing is that we can get all of the economic trade onto one chain, like every single transaction going down from a Satoshi transfer to a $1 billion real estate deal. We have platform maximalism, which is every app, every software app needs to be a decentralized application that's built on the blockchain, whether that's the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain. Then there's monetary maximalism, which is saying we want the chain to be the fundamental basis of global economic trade, where all economic trade is denominated in the units that make up that chain. So it's important to ask yourself, if I could have nothing out of this thing, what am I here for? For me, the answer is simple. It's sound money. I am a monetary maximalist, and what matters to me is that we can establish a global sound money that no one can control, no individual can control, rather, as we learned from Pierre's talk, and that I basically effectively want to put the Federal Reserve out of business so we can have a better money than what they've been able to provide. Well, things like Visa and PayPal, which we have, there's many ways you can critique their business practices. Any effects on them is incidental. I want payment networks, both centralized and decentralized, that can fulfill what people need in their economic trade. And things like Lightning Network and other tech that give us cool smart contracts and payment platforms and all of these are fantastic, and I do think that they add value to what we can do with Bitcoin. But ultimately, it's just simply the fact that we have this scarce economic resource that we can denominate all global trade in. That is enough. So, the important thing here is understanding monetary competition. And monetary maximalism, the sort of brand of Bitcoin maximalism that I promote, is often thought to be a sort of prescriptive argument against how the world ought to be. That is, that I think that there should be no competition. We should just have Bitcoin, and no one should try anything else. I am 100% for monetary competition. However, I would argue that the realities of monetary competition are that one will dominate the rest in a free market, because the more people that use a particular medium of exchange, the more economic opportunities that you can actually seize with those. And it makes it more annoying to have to do trade with someone from another country if they're using a different currency, because you have to go through the process of trading for those different currencies before you can even get to the actual trade itself. If everyone's just using the same money, it makes this much easier. And I believe that because of the properties that Saifedean described in his talk, Bitcoin has the optimal monetary policies and properties that make it the most likely to become this global dominant reserve currency. So because of this, my arguments for monetary maximalism are a sort of acceptance of just how monetary competition operates, rather than saying Bitcoin must be the thing. I think that Bitcoin will be the thing because I understand monetary competition. However, if you come to share that belief, there's going to be implications for what that belief means in terms of how you act in the world. So, let's imagine that Bitcoin does become the global dominant currency in a process we might call hyper-Bitcoinization, and it goes to the moon. Bears tend to think that it might only be, $10 million worth in today's purchasing power, but it's untold what it could potentially be. Therefore, if you hold Bitcoins now, it could be worth an unfathomable amount of money in the future, and thus holding it is this extreme test on your time preference and personal values. Like, if you have a certain number of Bitcoins in the future, you could own the world, so to speak. You can buy anything you want, but it requires holding for a long time, and it requires actually knowing what you want so that you can withstand that test. So there is no correct answer because everyone has their own personal time preferences and values and such, but there are a lot of ways in which people can scam you on these grounds, and that you can maybe not live up to your potential because you underestimate how you can make use of your preference and values. So, one of the most common ones is the idea that spending Bitcoins is somehow good for the network. Under the argument is that when you spend, you're sort of creating more economic activity, you're helping grow the network, so more people are accepting it, so that's great. There's, as opposed to just holding, which increases demand for the Bitcoins, which increases the price, which creates that juggernaut that Saifedean was explaining. Now, in the beginning of the network, spending actually did kind of help Bitcoin. When people like me saw the Silk Road had people spending Bitcoins to purchase drugs online, which to the libertarian in me, it was a very exciting prospect for the future of free markets. It was very good at showing us what Bitcoin was capable of, and that was very good for bootstrapping. But it doesn't necessarily tell us that we ought to go buy drugs ourselves. We might want to hold off. If you like drugs, you can afford a lot more drugs later on if you just hold. So anyway, yeah, as I said, it's actually when you hold, that has more of an effect on the growth of the network by increasing liquidity in the network. When a merchant wants your Bitcoins, they're just trying to take your money and give you something for it. But it's not the fact that you're spending Bitcoins that's helping the network. It's because if a merchant is demanding Bitcoins, it means they themselves want to use it as a store of value or their own medium of exchange for whatever business purposes they have. And thus, that side of the equation is what's more sort of growing the network. But you actually dishodling, it does not have that same effect. In fact, if you refuse to hodl, it means the merchants have to do more to get those Bitcoins out of you, which means, like we said, the price of Bitcoin is going up. So this actually brings up a very important distinction that a lot of people have failed to make, which is understanding the difference between medium of exchange and method of payment. A medium of exchange is simply a good that you purchase for the purpose of indirect exchange, something that you buy for no other reason than because later on you can sell it to someone else to receive a good. Method of payment, on the other hand, is merely the way that you're transferring this good. So when you use Visa, you're swiping your card as a way to somewhere on a ledger move where those that dollar ownership is going. So it's a separate concept, but people often say that well, you need to spend your Bitcoins because that's using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. If we understand medium of exchange purely as a means for, as a good that you buy for the purposes of indirect exchange, you can think of store of value as purchasing that good in order to make a future exchange. And thus you're trading the present value of a good for the future value of a good. So if you're buying Bitcoins today, it's because you believe Bitcoins will be worth more in the future and you can get more out of it. Store of value is colloquially a longer period of time, but it's effective. It can be any period of time. So in this sense, store of value itself is not quite distinct from medium of exchange. So if someone is trying to get you to miss out on future gains from your Bitcoins that you may actually want on the basis that you're not using it as a medium of exchange, the fact that you're using it for future exchange, whether it's future in a week, future in a year, or future in many generations down the line, you're still using it as a medium of exchange. So then we get to the idea of like basically competing currencies, or making any sort of investment in the crypto space, more specifically as opposed to just in general. But when you believe that hyper-Bitcoinization is going to happen, or has a very high chance, and that's part of what drives your investment decision in Bitcoin, any investment, other investment that you make needs to be priced in Bitcoin. The returns need to be, look, if I only held Bitcoins, how did my investment do compared to that? And so far, the track record is mostly pretty terrible. We have an endless graveyard of altcoins who have died over the years. That being said, some of them do very well in the short term. So for instance, in my original 2014 article, this was before Ethereum had come out, and I actually was not so sure that Ethereum would actually be a real working network. And I was clearly wrong. However, despite Ethereum now having been, had you gotten in on the pre-sale, you have done phenomenally well in that short term. That doesn't necessarily tell us about the very long-term potential. So if your thesis has to do with a hyper-Bitcoinization world, the actual time period in which you want to hold Ethereum versus Bitcoin is still not so certain. And the question we have to ask when we're thinking about these long-term investments is, well, can it be Bitcoin as money? And if yes, then consider it carefully and look at what its potentials are. Ethereum, for instance, I do not believe is a good competitor to Bitcoin, because the fundamental reason that I think that Bitcoin can succeed is, as Saifedean was explaining, it's the hardest money, it has the most secure monetary policy, while Ethereum, I still fail to even understand what its monetary policy truly is, if it even exists. And given its track record so far, it's uncertain that there's, in fact, I'd be very pessimistic on the idea that it would ever be able to secure that monetary policy in the sense of, keeping it going. It's one, DAO, how hard for it kind of thing to decide to turn it into a inflationary mess. So when we're looking at any of these things, we have to look at these coins based on their monetary policy when we're looking at the long term. So I think of multi-coining as distraction maximalism. So there's a gazillion cryptocurrencies. The list just goes on and on. Back when I first got into Bitcoin, there was Namecoin and Litecoin, and that was about it. And then in 2013, there was what I call the Scambrian explosion of altcoins. And since then, it's a never-ending list. In the past, especially the past year or so, we saw this incredible rise of ICOs and so-called app coins and utility tokens and all these things. all of these coins, whether they call themselves cryptocurrencies or they call themselves, the digital gas or oil, whatever Ethereum calls it, or ICOs or whatever thing, because they're this scarce resource that people empirically are using as a medium of exchange, we have to treat it as competing currencies, because empirically this is how we see it being used in the market. And so with that, we have to think carefully about that monetary competition. Now, given that, it's impossible to keep up with all of these altcoins. There are endless of them. I don't even know half the ones that when people come up and they'll say, oh, have you heard of, Chainlink? And I was like, no, I don't know what Chainlink is, because it just came out yesterday and I'm not on the esoteric altcoin trading boards that talk about these things. It's a mistake, in my opinion, to spend your time thinking about these things if they haven't given a sort of proven reason why they could compete with Bitcoin as a global currency. To spend your time doing that when there is so much work to be done in the Bitcoin space itself. Bitcoin being a network that's existed for 10 years now, lived up to its value proposition and continues to grow in a positive sense on all of these dimensions. So when you have Tron plagiarized white papers, spending time reading those all day in the hopes of finding the right investment versus focusing in on the important education and development of Bitcoin. When it comes to the value of my long-term goals for society and my own self-interested goals and becoming more wealthy or something like that, focusing in is a much better strategy in my opinion. Being said, there are limits to hodling, and I think this is something that trips up some people in the community as well. There's a sort of notion of portfolio maximalism, which is that you can only be a true Bitcoin maximalist if you put every single cent of your net worth into Bitcoin, as opposed to having a sort of diverse basket of investments. And the reality is, like I said, everyone has different values and time preferences, so we can't say that there's one true investment strategy. Some people have other things they want than just having a ton of Bitcoins in the future. For instance, for the people who just wanted a Lambo in this whole thing, the only reason they were in Bitcoin in the first place was because they wanted to get to where they can afford a Lambo. Well, once you get to the point where you can afford a Lambo, buy the Lambo and you're done, and you don't really need to be as engaged with Bitcoin anymore. And it doesn't matter, if you didn't want 20 of them, you only wanted one, then holding a money for the purposes of getting 20 has extremely low marginal value. So with this, another important point is, you want to be a investor, not a gambler. So, I tend to think that if someone loses sleep over their Bitcoin investment, they've probably invested too much, and you shouldn't force yourself into this psychological state, which also puts you at risk for making very quick decisions about, panic selling and stuff like that, just because you wanted to prove how much of a Bitcoin maximalist you were. A Bitcoin maximalist simply has that positive economic belief that Bitcoin will take over. That doesn't necessarily mean that you also personally have to be fully invested in Bitcoin. You can, invest in just time and land, whatever it is that you're interested in. So the real important lesson of all of that is to really zero in on what do you actually want in life, and focus on being able to achieve those long-term goals. So instead of letting people trick you into thinking that you need to give up Bitcoins for the purposes of some kind of altruistic thing for the network, focus in on where can this investment take you and figure out what the best strategy is from there. And don't let people scam you out of your potential. So Bitcoin is like a once in history opportunity, I think. We've never had anything like this, and once Bitcoin exists, I don't think it's easy to replicate. I don't think there's going to be anything like it in the world of money, at least, that'll ever come along. And because money is such a foundational pillar of civilization, you should not take it lightly what kind of opportunity you have right now, whether it's to invest in Bitcoin like monetarily or just to be a part of the community and help it grow in understanding and get people interested in. It's very important that you figure out what you truly value so you can make the best decisions to get those actual things, and don't scam yourself into giving up your spot in your envisioned world just because someone else was able to get you to have a misunderstanding of the economics of the situation. So anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at Bitstein. You can visit the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute at nakamotoinstitute.org. There's also the Noted Bitcoin podcast, which I co-host with Pierre Rochard, and you can find that at noted.org. So thank you.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that, Tony. I enjoyed getting to listen to it. I actually was so busy during the event. I say this every time. I didn't get to pay attention during the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was definitely half listening during the event as we were running around, making sure everything was just right. And it was just right. It did great.
Yeah. So that was good talk. And I think Michael's coming back next year for BitBlock Boom. So that will be good. Anything else we need to go over here? I'm sure I have some promotions to do, but I thought I'd throw the floor to you first before I start my promotions.
Well, just wanted to shout out to the NTBA, North Texas Blockchain Association. Has been doing a lot of events every month. I think they said 19. They're trying for 19 events a month.
That's the North Texas Blockchain Association. Or, no, it's not association.
No, it's not.
No, it's North Texas Blockchain
Alliance.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we want to make sure we get it right. And that's at ntba.io. If you're in the Dallas Metroplex, check out what's happening every week.
Yeah, they have a mining event tonight, but I can't. I was going to make that, but I can't make that. I have to go to another event in Arlington. So, and I saw you had asked me that in an email, which I hadn't replied to yet. So, I don't like emails, so I hadn't replied yet.
I know.
So,
I like
I'd
emails.
tell you.
Gary likes text, in case you're wondering how to reach us.
Yeah. Don't email me. I don't even like looking at them. But also make sure, we appreciate everybody listening. If you're not subscribing, make sure and subscribe. You can go to cryptocousins.com/subscribe, and you can see every method of subscribing that there is on the planet and just choose the one that works for you. Check out our YouTube at youtube.com/cryptocousins and give us a voice call at 747-777-9471.
Or email questions, which I'll answer.
Yeah.
Which I'm the one for the email at thecryptocousins@gmail.com.
That's it. Well, that's it for the day, unless you have anything else you want to add, Tony.
That's about it. Just keep your Bitcoin safe. Don't lose your private keys, and don't trust anyone.
That's great advice. Great advice. And see how we did this at the end? So the people who don't like hearing our promotions, you can just end the show. They don't even have to listen anymore. We're trying to take all the advice we get and put it into...
We're taking our reviews seriously.
Yeah.
Especially the bad ones.
Oh, well, I'm thinking about it. Let me give us another promotion there. Hey, if you're listening to this on your phone, swipe up. Just put your finger on it. Swipe up, and you should see a thing where you can give us a review. Do it. Do it now.
Do it now. Do it now, as they say.
If you're driving your car, pull over on the side of the road,
swipe
up on your phone, and give us a review. But that's it. Hey, I'm out of here. Thanks, guys. Love you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Crypto Cousins podcast. Please share this podcast with anyone you know that is interested in cryptocurrency. Your friends can subscribe on iTunes at cryptocousins.com/iTunes and on Android at cryptocousins.com/play. If you want to know more about Tony or Gary, just go to tonysakala.com or garyleland.com. Make sure and join us on the next episode, and thanks for listening. The Crypto Crypto Cousins podcast and information in the podcast are not intended as investment advice. Cryptocurrencies are risky. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. Always seek professional advice before making any investment. Investing in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies may present tremendous risks. Please understand that you are using any and all information available on or through the Crypto Cousins podcast at your own risk.